Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. And with a welcome offer of 150,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership, your business can soar to new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
Hilton brings you new ways to stay, with experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
Llegaron los nuevos McCrispy Strips, listos para aventurarse en la mezcla de mayo ketchup, la barbecue que quedó en el fondo de la cajita, Hot Fudge Sundae y en la nueva Creamy Chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Los nuevos McCrispy Strips, ahora en McDonald's. Para pa pa pa.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbiff Rugby podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby. The top 14, Pro Day, the Nationale, the Champions Cup, Challenge Cups, the French national team, more importantly, the brilliant towns, cities, bars, restaurant, food, wine, stadia, people, fans, everything that make French rugby such an incredible experience. Got a very special episode coming up with a very special guest, but before that, we have a very special presenter from somewhere on the Isle of Wight. Rob, what is news from the deepest, darkest, where are you? Ryde or something?
Seaview is the town, village. What's news? Well, I'm wearing my Free Spitzer fleece.
Been a must, though.
Officially sponsored by Jean-Noel Spitzer from Van. But and I'm wearing, you'll notice the hat I'm wearing was based on what I thought was going to happen this weekend, and I didn't bring my jumper that would have been the correct call. But yeah, bit of an interesting weekend. But yeah, I'm enjoying unemployment, to be honest. So not only can you follow us at Rosby's Rugby on all social media, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you need someone to do finance stuff. Other than that, I'm all right. How are you? How was your weekend?
I'm good. The weekend was absolutely fine. It was a day longer than usual, which is always incredible. It's that time of year, isn't it? It's so good. Just that little sprinkling of extra time off work it's fabulous. I'm off this weekend as well, off to Mallorca for a wedding.
Nice.
So life is all right at the moment, and we were treated, and I think because we've got a busy agenda, we should get straight into it. We were treated to a fabulous weekend, not just round of Champions Cup rugby, but we're going to have to start with Bordeaux Toulouse, which I believe you did a sterling job of managing not to see for a while, or the pictures didn't get across to the Isle of Wight for a few days. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, the dial-up didn't quite. I had to wait for people to leave the Isle of Wight for the dial-up to work for me to be able to stream the replay. I watched that this morning, so we're recording this Tuesday evening. But because you were prolific with your tweets and people were liking every tweet that you put out, I kind of had a rough idea. And then also from various WhatsApp groups, having organised a stag do to Bordeaux, turns out that's quite a good way to get a spoiler on a Bordeaux game.
Knew you organising a stag do for yourself for someone else would come back to bite you eventually. And it's taken a year, but we got there.
Had I not got those messages, I probably could have gone until this morning without knowing the result.
No Midi Olympiques in the Seaview post office.
No. The Seaview Village Community Shop does not stock. It stocks Le Figaro and L'Equipe, but not Midi Olympique.
Le Canard en Chien. All those. Well, where do we get started? Maybe straight up. We've been speaking a lot about stadium food recently, and your eagle eye, you spotted that there was in fact the infamous Bordeaux hot dog stand that the Chaban Delmas has infiltrated.
It was really visible. Yeah. It was really visible as Johnny Beattie was doing those excellent. He was brilliant in those pre-match briefings and previews and talking. He could barely hear what the pundits in the studio were saying, but I couldn't couldn't take my eyes off them. Just said hot dog in really big letters. I think maybe because we've spoken about it quite a bit over the last few weeks, maybe I was particularly attuned to it. But I hope the Bordeaux and Toulouse fans had other brilliant food rather than just the Matmut Atlantique hot dog. But aside from that, the Matmut Atlantique looked pretty mega, didn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. As I was watching it, obviously it was a couple of years ago. We went, a little group of us, and I was pointing out to Claudia that we were at that very venue, probably slightly lower quality of rugby, although La Rochelle were pretty fabulous against Exeter that day. God, it's a long 2 years as an Exeter fan to think we're in the Bordeaux sun in the Champions Cup semi-final, but 2 years ago. But there we go. But I loved this. I thought it really just some outstanding rugby, a little bit of that sort of clash of styles to an extent, which I think made it really engrossing throughout, and just some flashes of real class bordering on genius at points from the sort of familiar names that we know and love. It was quite a spectacle. I thought anyway. I don't know if it felt the same on a Tuesday morning.
I'd say I absolutely loved the first half. I think the second half I loved a little bit less, because I think actually, weirdly, the longer it went on, the more the less Toulouse looked. I think like they just couldn't. It was just kind of strange that they couldn't quite piece it together. We're so used to players just slotting in, and doesn't matter 1 to 15 who's playing, blah blah blah. And actually, it looked like they didn't quite have the combinations right, or they weren't all in sync, or they weren't kind of all reading off the same hymn sheet sort of stuff. I thought Barassi was probably the best since he got picked for France early this year. But other than that, they all looked a little bit not quite there, I think. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think
the backline certainly.
Yeah, a little bit disjointed. The one thing I'll counter that with slightly, I completely agree that they didn't find that sort of rhythm in the backs that you associate with them when they're at their best, and you've got kind of Entomac and Ramos like stepping in at first receiver at various points, and it just looks so smooth. The one thing I will say is I think there was a little period, probably between about 50 and 60 minutes, perhaps just ahead of the Gazzotti yellow, where they were, okay, they didn't have that fluidity, but they were getting really quick ruck ball. It was like off 9, big lumps. Flamand really came into it with his carrying, suddenly was everywhere. And it just reminded me a little bit of when the table started to really turn in that game in Dublin in the Six Nations. When they had the big heavy boys coming on. Obviously, in that instance, I think, was that one of the games where they brought Meafu off the bench and suddenly he was
quite possibly,
code stuff. And that part of it just felt a little bit ominous. They were really on top at scrum time, and I actually think it was real credit to Bordeaux that they were able to, if not totally withstand, they were able to kind of quell that onslaught for a period of time and eventually wrest back momentum with some fantastic jackling. So yeah, I completely agree. They weren't perhaps as fluid as you would like to see a full firing Toulouse side, but I think they were finding a way, and it's credit to Bordeaux that they were able to stop it.
Yeah, I think it's that kind of classic thing of like, was it Toulouse being slightly off colour in attack, or was it the Bordeaux defence that made them off colour, because they couldn't seem to find the space? I thought the forwards generally were pretty. I thought Marchand was exceptional.
Yeah, he's been amazing, hasn't he, for a few months now?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like, to borrow a phrase from another podcast, probably, I feel like Malvaca is like your peacetime hooker, and then Marchand, like when it's war and it's, if you've got a game for your life, you probably go Marchand. Malvaca's, probably a better rugby player, but I think in a game for your life, you probably pick Marchand. I thought he was great. Willis, I think, was outstanding as ever. Interesting one in a weekend where obviously the other game was completely dominated by, one open side flanker, but I thought Van der Fleer was excellent as well. So it's kind of it's kind of mad to think that you've got this world class player that might have been the third best in his position over the weekend over British players anyway. So, but this game was really all about Bordeaux, wasn't it? And I thought Jalabert, it was kind of a nice, not quite like redemption, but he was just he completely outshone Entomac, let's put it that way. But he's just such a thrilling player. He's just magical, isn't he?
Yeah, we've said it so many times. He's when it clicks, he's one of the best players to watch. I can think of. It's the turn of pace amongst all the distribution and the kind of the skills and the vision. It's just having that and being able to burst through gaps and see things as quickly as he is. Like the early try, Samu, isn't it? Who gets on the end of it? It's just like wonderful. It's exactly what. Obviously, not every game is like. You don't want to see every game like that, but it's exactly what you want to see Mathieu Jalibert doing, ball in hand. Yeah, it's just phenomenal to watch, and I'm sure it's probably on your list to come on to. He was fabulous in that aspect of the game. Some of his kicking from hand was unbelievable as well, in terms of not just distance, but accuracy and timing and mixing it up on slow ball. It was a real, save for a couple of slightly iffy kicks at goal. And we know he's not the most natural defender, but as an attacking fly half, it was pretty much the complete performance, I thought.
I feel like the whole thing about his defence is a little bit overblown. Like there's probably like 4 fly halves in world rugby that are like good defenders.
Yeah, I don't think it's
like Pollard, Finn Smith. Who else? Right.
Entomac.
Yeah, fair.
I don't think it's. I agree. I don't think it's overblown in the sense of the France 10 conversation. But yes, I think it's fair that there's not many lads just whacking
is he
people.
Much, especially in a weekend where Sam Prendergast played touch rugby. But like, is Jalibert materially worse than George Ford or Marcus Smith? Or Finn Russell's actually a very good defender, but is he way worse than any of them? I don't know. And his attacking stuff is brilliant. His boot is magnificent. Like there was one where he just nails the penalty, doesn't he, into the corner, and they score from that. And it's just, and I thought generally the kicking of both scrum halves was excellent. And Grau, the much, well, he's never going to come out of these sorts of games positively. He's kicking long off both feet as well. Like, yes, Dupont can do it. Yes, Luku can do it. Well, so can this bloke. Like, he had a bit of it's easy to pin the blame on him. I thought he was decent. If he's not,
he was okay.
If you don't know the alternative universe where Antoine Dupont is in that side, then he actually had a decent game. Like, he didn't make too many errors. He was kind of very physical. His kicking was really good. Yes, he could have been more magical, but can't really blame a bloke for being okay. Thought Saito came on when they needed him to come on, to be fair, to bring in a bit of pace. But I thought both, talking of kicking of the nines, I did not know Maxime Luku had 60 metres off the tee in his locker, which was a pretty key point, actually, because that stretched the lead out far enough for them to kind of build a bit of a gap. But I didn't know that. I assumed Jalibert was like the longer range kicker, if anything.
Yeah, or maybe like I don't know why I was expecting it, but like Buros or something.
Buros, like
big boot 15. Who was also brilliant, Roman Buros. He's had a pretty rank time of it with injuries, isn't he? After he got in the France team and then was injured against the All Blacks, came back again, got injured against Exeter, I think it was, and like what a brilliant player. Again, all-round skill set. He was fabulous. And another guy before we come on to the main event, who we've spoken about a lot, and he has come in for a bit of criticism because the Bordeaux line-out has been pretty iffy, although it did a job in this one. But Maxime Lamoth was absolutely outstanding. Real all-action hooker.
Kind of what I feel like he hasn't put in that sort of performance for a while. Like, he was we saw that a lot last year. And
Agreed.
His line out this game was probably closer to what it was last year, kind of a 80% as opposed to 50. The player I thought you were going to go for, who I thought was, I've flipped between thinking he's great and he's pretty bang average, but Pete Samu was the all-court back rower. Like, to be involved in those 2 wonderful tries, his line out work, his physicality around the breakdown, his tackling, the tackling of that whole back 5, like Bosheton, who played the majority of the game in the end, I thought was excellent. Petty, just I think they're gonna really miss him next year. Him going to Quins. He's been such a key player for them in that just bit of physical. I guess he ended up playing second row mainly once Coleman went off, but Samu, I thought it was an outstanding game. And he could have easily, like, if he'd been man of the match, I wouldn't have had too many complaints.
Yeah, agreed. Should we finish on Louis Biel-Biarré?
Yeah,
or is there not much more to say?
Go on, you can go.
Well, I think the try after half time, okay, there probably are better tries, but I can't remember being as blown away by a try in recent times. How often do you see a team go the length basically untouched? And
Tipperick v England.
That's it. That's the only other time I can think of something like that. And that was one of the greatest Six Nations tries ever. It's just the astonishing piece of skill, and not just obviously the gas, but the audacity, but also the way, and it's no slight on Paul Grau, like any defender getting turned around like that is cooked.
Yeah.
But there's a little freeze frame there where if you paused it,
he's facing completely the wrong way.
Two people on him, and there's a fullback as well. And you're like, if you odds on this basically goes under the sticks untouched, you're like, nah. And then sure enough, he's gone. And it's even the sort of the little 1-2 with Osama again, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The little 1-2. It's just so cleanly executed, and not just it's a brilliant try, but the timing of it to do that, to suddenly kind of kickstart your half and take it out to a 14-point lead like that at the start of the second half against Toulouse. I was blown away by the whole thing. I thought it was like a really special Champions Cup moment.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be an icon. Like, if Bordeaux end up winning this tournament, that would be one of they won't talk about the Penno 6 tries against the Sharks or anything like that. They'll talk about that try, I'd imagine, because of like the context of their recent history with Toulouse. Given that, that was quite a comfortable win in the end. It never felt as comfortable until the last 3 minutes or whatever, and they get the Big Ben try. But it was quite comfortable. It was only not comfortable for kind of the same reason why none of the wins in the 2005 Ashes were comfortable, because you expect this great side to beat this team that is always flattered to deceive against them. You kind of expected Bordeaux to blow up, and you expected Toulouse to pull something out of the air. But as you say, other than a kind of 5-10 minute period, they didn't really look like that was ever going to happen. But you still never ruled it out. It was kind of that weird situation.
Yeah. Particularly when they were down to 10 men as well, and the scrum was getting toasted, wasn't it? And you're like, yeah. But you're right. After that, and in fact, they scored that try, didn't they? Quite shortly after Gazzotti went off, and never really, as much as they made ground, never really were under the shadow of the post, were they? No. Which again is testament to Bordeaux, and the back five, which you correctly point out were kind of everywhere.
Other than anything else you want to add on this game, what do you think going forward? I'm actually more interested in the impact this has on the top 14. I think like we said last week, it would be an amazing final if it does end up being Northampton Bordeaux, and it could be like the 9-3 or something, because they're both just so scared about bottling it. But it could equally be one of the most thrilling finals ever. I wonder if 2025 is the year of the bridesmaid. Like, we've already had Rory McIlroy win the Masters. Are PSG going to win the Champions League? I suppose, Liverpool aren't really the bridesmaid, are they? But maybe this is Bordeaux's year. Maybe 2025 is the year that all those teams finally turn the corner. Clermont are going to win the top 14.
Yeah, that would be something. I think it'll be it sets up. We don't need to talk about the final yet because it's a few weeks away. But I think it's so beautifully poised. Yeah, almost kind of unimaginable. And I know we haven't really spoken about them, but that Northampton performance at Leinster was pretty extraordinary. Yeah, you're right in the top 14 race, because they've got some key fixtures, and they go away to Montpellier this weekend, which you imagine there'll be some arrested bodies. Week after, I think they host Cast, and you'd imagine there'll be some cotton wool out for that. You can't be. Which maybe brings Cast a little, I don't know, maybe a little losing bonus point in there, maybe more. And then I think the game after the final is away to Toulon. Yeah. Which, if you've taken an absolute, if you've spent a week on the Raz in Cardiff because you've won the Champions Cup or lost it, you're right. I guess the key thing is they're going to be in the barrage at least, aren't they? And
Yeah.
I think they'll just have to focus everything on the Champions Cup and then work out what happens afterwards. Is how I would
it's
be
more
looking at
that
it.
if we see a repeat of that in a semi-final or final of the top 14 with Ramos, Kinghorn, Malvaca back fit, I think
Malvaca's done for ages, isn't he? So
Malvaca might be done for the season, to be fair.
So it's kind of Ramos and Kinghorn, which is...
And I think this game showed how key Ramos is. I think...
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we've spoken about him being the main man, and I think this really underlined that he's as key to that team as Dupont, really. But I think we could see like another 59-3 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not out of the reckoning. Or they've kind of got the monkey off the back and they do repeat of that game. Be interesting to see. But I'm fascinated to see what happens the next time that they meet each other. Get them away from Matmut Atlantique and they can...
Fortress Matmut.
Yeah.
Very good. It was quite the match. The other all French occasion over the weekend, I watched a little bit of Lyon Racing in the Challenge Cup final, which was slightly
I think by the sounds of
things,
you've seen the better bit, because I watched the first half today and I can assume that there must be a better bit than that bit.
It wasn't,
because it was pretty
great.
Stodgy. It was just teams kicking it. Thought like the service, like pace of ball from Lyon was really slow, and then Couillou just like pops. Like he looked pretty pedestrian for a lot of the first half, and then he just pops nips down the blind side, pop over the top, bit of a 1-2 under the sticks. Cheers, like. But
yeah, that was high class.
Generally, it was it wasn't quite dreary,
but sets up a nice little Le Crunch light double header in Cardiff, Lyon v Bath, and then Bordeaux v Northampton, which is rather nice. I've never been to Northampton, but apparently it is a little bit gritty. So I was going to say, like, you got 4 beautiful cities there, but I don't know if Northampton does fit that bill. If you're a Northampton fan, let us know why it's so good. They've never been. So.
Even the lift experiment thing that's next to Franklin's Gardens, I think that's now disused. It's no longer it was like a lift testing facility, that big tower that you see at Franklin's Gardens. I think it's now out of use. So it's
okay.
Although it is the home of Church's shoes, so there must be something.
Well, all shoes.
Yeah.
Well, one day we'll go. Shall we leave that there? You mentioned very briefly. You alluded to the Battle of the Sevens in the British and Irish Lions consideration. It is this week, of course, that Andy Farrell announces his squad live at Indigo O2 Arena, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious and
quite cool. That
I think it's a bringing.
It's gonna be amazing when Owen Farrell gets announced and he gets booed.
Wasn't it the last one where they did holograms because it was during the pandemic? That was a hell of a touch. Johnny Hill suddenly is beamed in from space. It's something no one expected to see. But we thought, what better way to mark that announcement than to ponder British and Irish, or potential British and Irish Lions 15 players who have played in France. And we were very fortunate earlier to be joined by the magnificent Elgan Alderman to help us with this task. So enjoy.
Well, so we are delighted to be joined yet again for a special feature about the British and Irish Lions by the UK's leading British historian, Elgan Alderman, reporter for the Times Sport. Welcome back to the podcast. You are our first return visitor as well.
Oh, remarkable. It's like hosting Saturday Night Live. There'll be a 5-timers club, sure, on very soon.
Yeah, it's like, the ball on Soccer AM, they used to get a football for their third time. You get delivered like a rib of beef or something, maybe. But the reason we've got you on, so obviously for English or British fans, appreciate we are an English-speaking podcast, but the majority of that will be British listeners. It is a huge week of British rugby this week because on Thursday there is Andy Farrell announcing his Lions squad for this summer's tour. And obviously we know that tour should be going to France, as we did at the very start of this season with Elgan. But we wanted to have a little bit more fun again in terms of intertwining British and Irish Lions with French rugby. And we thought, well, let's try and do an all-time French-based British and Irish 15. So it is not Lions. It's not just Lions. It's not just internationals. It is not the best, most legendary players to have played in, or British players to have played in France. It is guys that have played in France that are from Great Britain and Ireland, and they were pretty damn good when they were there. And actually, because of the nature of it, a lot of them weren't playing international rugby when they were doing brilliant stuff in French rugby. Our little asterisk on the all-time is due to our kind of collective age. We've kind of done from what would be the 2001 Lions tour onwards. So from the 2000-2001 season, it was the kind of criteria of players that we were going to select from. Have I missed anything out, Richard?
I don't think so. That's clear as mud, but clear enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And Elgan, just before we get into that, you've been a very, very busy man since we last spoke to you. I mean, we can't get you on without talking about the Rugby Man column. You've kind of made it your own, the French rugby shtick in British media. You are the leading writer, surely.
Oh, I know some people that would put me into the shade, I'm sure, but yeah, no, it all originated from Van's season opener. I was in France for the Paralympics. The games were winding down just as the top 14 was beginning. I was a 2-hour train ride from Van v Toulouse, so I thought I'm going to pop down, see how it goes, write a piece about it, and then I thought let's do a column about it every week. And my editors were very receptive to the idea, and yeah, for the past 8 months or so, been mining through some of the 130 years of crazy French rugby history, and hopefully having a bit of fun, and hopefully the readers having a bit of fun as well.
Yeah, it's been great. There was a brief break, which I should note, that was for, and I don't think either Rich or I are going to blame you for this, but while you were in India watching Champions Trophy, or was it just in England? No, it was Champions Trophy.
It was pre-Champions Trophy. England had their 8 matches against India, T20s and ODIs. So I was writing up a bit of Alain Penaud from my hotel room in Calcutta, which is quite an incongruous thing to be doing. But generally we take the international periods off and then ramp it up again when top 14 and club rugby is back in the mirror.
Have you got a favourite article of the ones you've written, or one that really stands out as like one you're really proud of?
I think the story of Ebbw beating Toulouse was just one I was born to tell, and I've wanted to tell it my entire life. And I was shocked to see that so many other people were also delighted to read about it as well. For those of you who don't know, the greatest result in rugby sports history was Ebbw losing to Toulouse 108-16 and then winning the return fixture 19-11. Rugby does not get better than that.
Yeah, because it came up because of the Toulon Saracens game, didn't it? So that was the second highest amount points scored in a game and most tries or something, and then possibly the famous Toulouse Ebbw game.
Yes, there was. It was also because everyone loves to talk about the fact that there's no home and away group stage anymore, and my thesis was that Ebbw proved conclusively in 1998 why it's an absolute necessity of European competition.
And talking of Europe, did you manage to? I think you were you at the Magic Weekend for Super League, or were you just watching it?
I just went, as a punter with 3 friends, 2 of my best men and another friend from university as well, who's from Preston, so he's Wigan adjacent. So we went to see Wigan Warrington being the star encounter. So we just thought we'd pop up, stay by the seaside, and watch 3 games of rugby league at St James's Park.
Did you manage to catch either of the belting semi-finals that we had?
Yes. As soon as we got home, my friend Reese and I turned on Bordeaux Toulouse to watch that. It was a stupendous encounter. I mean, Mathieu Jalibert was like a man possessed, wasn't he? Shame about Damien Penaud, but we still got Louis Bebe and Jalibert to do their thing for the rest of the season, we hope.
Yeah, something nice to see Jalibert play well. And I kind of said earlier on in the season, with his seeming exile from the French national team, if he was a British player, you'd tell him move to France and go and earn a load of cash, which isn't really an option for French players, which is a very tenuous link to our subject matter, which is the best British and Irish players to have played in France, or 15 of British and Irish players to have played in France and based on their performances in France. So, for example, Johnny Sexton is basically not even considered because he was pretty rubbish at Racing, despite being one of the best players of his generation. 3-time Lion. he's basically completely disregarded. So what we thought, Elgin, was there'll be a few definites in this 15 based on their kind of time in France. If we kind of each kind of go around the table, state those definites, and then we'll work through, fill in the gaps, basically. So do you have anyone that you are like, this guy has to be in the 15 because of his performances in France?
I think starting in the traditional order of 15 to 9, 1 to 8, I will start at the very top. And I think Nick Abendinen at fullback as a European Player of the Year and top 14 winner has got to be in, surely.
Oh, he's not my fullback. He's not my fullback. Rich, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I was fullback. I thought was one of the hardest ones.
Fullback is the hardest.
Some real quality. I had a Bendon second, and maybe this is a bit of a recency bias, and I wanted a bit more of a spread, but I'm going very recent. I'm going Blair Kinghorn.
Right, well, I have a third different fullback, so we can come back to the definites. Rich, do you have any definites?
The last an hour and a half then at this
Yeah. Well, we started at the deep end. Rich, any definites for you?
What? For me, number 10, Johnny Wilkinson.
Yeah. I think we can probably agree that. I think, given his iconic status at Toulon. Basically, I think the last Lions fly half to have not been playing at France at some point, I think is probably Ronan O'Gara, because you've got Sexton, Russell, Stephen Jones, Dan Bigger, Owen Farrell, Gregor Townsend. You know, you've got basically every British and Irish fly half from the last kind of 20 years, 25 years, has played in France at some point. So
even Stuart Hogg, Lions fly half.
Exactly, yeah, good shout. He wasn't even on my list. But we are agreeing. I mean, my immediate reaction when Rich said that the other day that 10 was pretty nailed on, I kind of thought, yeah, but Finn Russell, like, he was brilliant at Racing, but
he was brilliant. I was reading an article from Johnny Wilkinson's last game where apparently both, I think it was against Cast in the top 14 final 2014, and supposedly both sets of fans started singing "God Save the Queen" at the end of the game, which sounds like a bit of a stretch, but that for me was enough to make that a no-brainer.
Yeah, fair enough. So I've got a left field definite, but my absolute definite is open side flanker, and that is Stefan Armitage.
I've got Armitage as well. Elgin, over to you.
I've got Armitage, but he's wearing 6 in my team. But he is in. He is in.
Okay. Any other definites? I've got one or two that could be pretty close to being definite, but they could equally be up for debate. Elgin, any other kind of nailed on starters?
I think that he only had one season, but he set the try-scoring record. Chris Ashton on the right wing.
That was my left field definite on the right wing. Chris Ashton, I think, has to be in there.
I've got Ashton at 14 on my list as well.
There we go. Look at that for unanimity. Rich, any more?
This is my slightly left field definite is at number 8. And I think it's left field because of arguably the least international pedigree out of everyone I've selected. But in terms of a standout season that was above and beyond pretty much anything I've seen, Zach Mercer at 8.
That would have been my next one. Yeah, he's my number 8. Elgin, is he in your back row? Is he your number 8?
Yeah, 3 from 3. Zach Mercer's my number 8.
Excellent. So I think let's cap the definites there because it's going to get a bit hard to track down otherwise. So we've got Stefan Armitage in the back row as one of the flankers. We've got Zach Mercer, Johnny Wilkinson at 10, and we have Chris Ashton at fullback. So you wanted to start at 15 then, Elgin? Okay.
And I've started with Clermont and Van, legend and top 14 winner and European Player of the Year, Nick Abendinen.
And Rich, you had a bloke that's basically never lost a game in France, although he has, but he's not far off. In Blair Kinghorn.
It's a bit dull. I prefer. Abendinen was such a phenomenal player, and I'd forgotten the Van connection as well, just for a little bit of extra je ne sais quoi. I'm
currently coaching at Bayonne as well.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have my arm twisted on Nick Abendinen.
Mine edging it ahead of Nick Abendinen was a player that would have come up against him in one of those finals, one of 3 that he won, and that is Dylan Armitage. And I kind of don't see how you can't argue for him because he was such an integral part of that team. In fact, he actually started. He was on the bench in that third win because another Lions fullback was also playing, and Lee Halfpenny played in that game as a starting 15 in the third Toulon triumph. But I think Armitage was such a key part of that great side. The kind of iconic moment of him wagging his finger as he runs one in the final as well. Don't know. I think I'm happy to go Bendenon because he was always a talent, and it felt like France, which will probably be a recurring theme throughout this. He was such a talent, never quite made it internationally, but France was where that talent kind of flourished and kind of really came to light, and he did get some sort of recognition that he probably deserved. So, Rich, you got the deciding vote on this, I think.
Bendenon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
God,
let's have him.
Can't believe we're leaving up to an Armitage. Jesus.
I think you think of a Bendenon as perhaps more synonymous with like more of a, I don't know, a kind of legend of Clermont than Armitage of Toulon, purely through probably the other players that were at Toulon at the time, would be my reading on that.
Right wing, we've got Chris Ashton. Outside centre, do you want to go Elgan?
I found the centres amongst the most difficult decision.
Yeah.
I tried so hard to make room for Phil Christophers, who played for Brive and cast and captain. But in the end, at outside centre, I went for who I think is my only Welshman in the team, Jonathan Davis, who started a Champions Cup final for Clermont in 2015.
I've got a different Welshman, albeit that he started a Heineken Cup final on the left wing, but he did play a lot at 13, and that is Gareth Thomas, who I think captained Toulouse a bit and was certainly with John Davis's time at Clermont is an interesting one because it was definitely coincided with a bit of a dip between like he's one of the great Lions of this century for sure. He kind of started 6 in a row, but his kind of overall form seemed like it dipped and he didn't quite fit in at Clermont, whereas Gareth Thomas was at Toulouse for quite some time and was one of the or around that era, there were a few players that kind of really integrated with their French club. Rich, who did you have at 13?
I've got Jonathan Davis as well. I found the centres really tricky. I think primarily with Gareth Thomas, I think primarily being it wasn't necessarily his pole or most consistent position, so it feels like a little bit of a fudge. So that's
I mean he captained 2 Lions tests from 13, so yeah, probably not his position, is it?
Well, not when he's playing in France.
The thing about Jonathan Fox was that as far as Welsh players go, I think he was. I mean, Gareth Thomas was another one, but actually a lot of the Welshmen that went there to France actually didn't do very well. So in terms of how Welshmen played in France, I think he was comfortably one of the best, even though best rugby was in Llanelli.
The other options I had at 13, so just to reel off a few names for people, because there'll be people shouting on their morning commute. Jamie Noon, Joe Marchant, who had an excellent season last season, but has been very quiet this season. Jonathan Joseph, we saw him at Biarritz and he was great, but other than that, he'd not played much. Sam James, a bit more of a 15 these days. Max Evans at Cast. Hugo Southwell, who I think had a stint at Stade Francais and played for Scotland in those years. But it sounds like we're going John Davis. I thought I'd get the niche random internationals out there, but it sounds like Lions legend John Davis has got the 13 berth.
Fine by me.
And 12, Rich, who are you going at? Because again, 12 is tough. Who are you going at 12?
Yeah, I was really struggling here. I sort of have gone, feels like a bit of a cop-out given the centre partner, but I went for his, if not totally dam-busting, not totally appalling time at Racing, Jamie Robert.
Oh God, I forgot about Jamie Roberts. I've not even got him on my list.
12 was tricky. Yeah. I found 12. Elgan, I'm intrigued to know who you lined up at 12 because I thought both these centres were hard.
Well, one side decided that I shouldn't go full Clive Woodward and have Stephen Jones at 10 and Johnny Wilkinson at 12. I went for a man you've actually already mentioned for the outside centre berth. I went for Jamie Noon of Brive, 2010 to 13, now father of a France age grade international. So all the more reason to get him in.
So 12 was an interesting one. I thought a couple of Welsh options. Gavin Henson played at Toulon. James Hook had a decent stint at Perpignan. I also overlooked the chance to get in a player that played for the Lions and against the Lions. And he's one of the niche pointless answers in that quiz. I decided against going for Ricky Flutie, who I think actually played for Brive when he went, or the next season after he was a Lion. but I've perhaps a little bit you talked about recency bias with Blair Kinghorn, Rich. This could be real recency bias given that the last game I saw him was a week ago. I'm going Manu Tuolangi because he's been great. And Bayonne certainly having their best season this century. So it kind of felt, he's kind of club legend in the offing maybe. But I'm more than happy to be shot down on that because it is based on 20 games.
Well, that's probably the same as a few others in here. I don't know. It doesn't sit well with me. Manu, as brilliant as he's looked in recent times.
I think maybe Jamie Noon is the answer. Maybe he had more of a lasting legacy. Or we go for Flutie for nicheness. Sounds like Jamie Noon is the man, I think. He was certainly an option for me.
Had a solid international career, didn't he, Jamie Noon? Maybe let's go Jamie Noon.
Okay. And
Jamie
also
Noon. I've got someone else later, which is a bit left field, who might have some familial connections to come.
Ooh, intriguing. Left wing is another interesting one. And Elgan, I'm assuming you haven't managed to shoehorn Phil Christophers in here either.
In this instance, I've gone for a man already selected in a different position elsewhere. Blair Kinghorn started in the back three for a Toulouse team that won a double.
Yeah, good shout. And barely lost. I don't think he lost a game in that. I think I know who Rich has picked because I just got a hunch. But I've gone for someone that Rich won't have picked, and that's Ian Bolshaw. And Rich has gone for Dave Strettle.
100% David Strettle.
Strettle had a long career at Claremont. Really long career.
Won the Champions Cup with Claremont, I believe.
Champions Cup? Top 14?
Top 14, sorry.
Yeah.
Won the top 14. Yeah. But I had him over Bolshaw purely kind of on gongs and that top 14 win. I think Bolshaw would have played in at least a Heineken Cup final, probably.
Yeah. And a few top 14 finals as well.
But I did also try and pick Blair Kinghorn, so it seems remiss of me not to do that. And he's played on that left wing quite a bit, hasn't he, in recent times?
One player we haven't mentioned who could have gone in at 15 because he started a final of a Champions Cup at 15, another player that had a little bit of a rebirth in his time with France, Simon Zebo, questionable pundit, very good Masters caddy, but also a very good player for Racing when he moved to Racing and was kind of a bit of a, don't know, we saw that team in their pomp, didn't we, Rich, against the Saracens, then Shags, and they delivered everything that we wanted in terms of ball playing rugby. So I kind of feel like I've got a little bit of a soft spot for kind of Zebo and Finn Russell and all that lot.
Struggling on this, Elgan. I think as guests, you could probably cast the deciding vote or the final argument to get one of these guys over the line.
I have to go. I will go with the man I've chosen. I just think starting in the back three for arguably the best club team Europe's ever had.
Yeah.
Ever. Gotta be it. And if someone else had him at 15, he can cover all three. He can even cover at 10 if Johnny goes down early.
Yeah, he's also kind of a potential kind of legend in the making, or kind of in the same way that we look at Gareth Thomas or David Strettle. That's kind of that sort of thing building. Fly half, we've got now down that Johnny Wilkinson. Scrum half, tough. So we did earlier in the season, we did a British and Irish 15 of current players in the top 14 and in Pro D2. And weirdly enough, given the depth that France have in their kind of national side, hooker and scrum half, the areas that generally there aren't that many British players playing in the top 14 or Pro D2 now. And it seems historically they've never really been that many. Rich, who have you gone for at 9?
I'd slightly slim pickings here and sort of a little bit by not having too many other options, ended up with Mike Phillips.
Okay.
Who was obviously a fine player, but perhaps not at his illustrious best in France at Racing.
Decent at Bayonne, though.
Couple of finals.
Well, no, he famously wasn't in the side.
He wasn't in the side
when they won because, because, and I always thought he was on the bench and they chose not to bring him on and move him off to 9, but actually he just wasn't even on the bench. So the fact that he kind of wasn't picked in the match day 23 for a final says, I don't know, it feels hard to pick Mike Phillips on that sort of basis because he had such a tough time at Racing. Elgan, who have you gone for at 9?
I considered, despite not really knowing at all how he played in France, Sean Perry on the basis that in my mind, he has one of the best passes I've ever seen when I was a child. I just thought it was so good. But in terms of just all-round French rugby legendary status, this is probably my most left field pick. I've gone for Johnny Howard, who played halfback for Béziers with Andrew Mertens, played for Bayonne and Aix, and is now co-owner and DOR of Béziers. So what more do you need from a scrum half?
Elgan, we knew there was a reason for inviting you on. I had Greg Laidlaw, but that's pointless, isn't it? Like, yeah, let's go for Johnny Howard. That's amazing. I hadn't even thought about that. Just a little side note on Brive. They seem to have really picked up a lot of these players. There's like an era of England player, particularly kind of that Brian Ashton sort of era England side that seemingly they all played for Brive, or there was like between World Cups or post 2007, it's like Sean Perry, Shane Geraghty, Jamie Noon, Ricky Flutie, Phil Christophers. It's kind of all those guys of like a certain era that all seemingly ended up at Brive, which are kind of it always quite amuses me, and they're kind of quite memorable in their own little way. But it's got to be Johnny Howard. Greg Laidlaw started. I think he might have even won a top 14 with Clermont, or got very close. But we are going Johnny Howard on the basis that he now owns part of Béziers, and he played alongside Mertz, who's synonymous with the top 14 these days. So we are now starting a loose head prop based on your order, Elgan. So who have you gone for a loose head prop?
I thought Sheridan was probably the obvious answer, but I've gone for Perry Freshwater. 9 years at Perpignan, won the top 14.
He was my next, if we were going to do the definites, he was my next kind of cab off the rank because he had such a long career at Perpignan and is the current scrum coach at Perpignan, where they are doing some serious damage up front. Rich, did you have Sheridan, Gethin Jenkins, Makavinapola, Tom Smith?
I had Perry Freshwater as well. Pretty
nailed on there. Hooker, interesting one. Or is it? Rich, who did you have?
Right, so I have I've got two names here. The obvious one was Steve Thompson, and the second one, I have no idea how they played whilst they were at Montferrand, I believe. But I've got, because I imagine it was quite good fun, I've got Richard Cockrell. But that is based on nothing other than I'd quite like to see Richard Cockrell like spearheading this side of youngins.
I kind of lent towards Cockers on that. Well, I'm a massive Cockers fan from his time at Leicester, and actually he was pretty good at Edinburgh as well for a period. And he was Elgan, you might be able to help us out on this. He was pretty good play. He was one of the world's premium hookers, despite not making the World Cup squad around that time, was he not?
Yeah, I mean that Montferrand team. My main knowledge of that late '90s Montferrand team is I think I saw Olivier Magne play for them in the flesh against Cardiff in maybe 2001. They had young Rougerie, and around that time they had Jan Makacek, who was a Czech back rower that also played for Newport and Sale. He's a cult figure in my life, Jan Makacek. But I'm sure Cockers gave as good as he got in that Montferrand pack in the late '90s.
I think it's a tricky one though, because my immediate thought was Steve Thompson, because he also because he moved to Brive after a pretty bad injury, didn't he? And then kind of rejuvenated his career and still made World Cup squads. And as a World Cup winner himself, kind of forged a new career almost at Brive. So, Rich, you can decide on this one. Who are we going for?
I actually didn't have Cockers, but I think it should be him because I was so short of hooker options. But I've got Dennis Fogarty, who played for Aurillac, Agen, and Provence, and was in the Pro D2 team of the season once. But even I don't think it should be him.
Rich, who are we going for? Cockers or Steve Thompson?
We need a bit of old school spite in this 15. It's Cockers.
Excellent. Also, he's had such an illustrious coaching career in France. Tight head is tough. I've barely got anyone that's not played this season effectively.
Who did you go for?
I went for friend of the pod, Kieran Brooks, the Catalan cow, because he's dominating. But that could well be recency bias. I'm happy to go Sinclair or Collier because they've also been great.
Elgan, where did you get to at tight head?
I had a similar, mainly recency bias debate. I think I have gone for Brooks on the basis that he's played 4 seasons in the top 14 as a tight head prop. I think I had better options for the tight head number 23 jersey because Aaron Jarvis, who hardly played for Wales, played for Clermont in a top 14 and Champions Cup final off the bench at tight head prop. But perhaps the most legendary, completely unknown British replacement tight head prop was a guy called Justin Ring, who came off to win a late scrum penalty for Stad in the 2000 final. So
Wow.
I know who's wearing 23, but 3, I think probably Kieran Brooks.
Nice.
Rich, who did you have?
I had I was struggling between those three English tight heads. I actually had Sinclair on the basis. You could argue he's an injury away from playing this year, but I'm more than happy to have Kieran Brooks in there.
Yeah, bit more longevity. Henry Thomas was the other option, top 14 winner off the bench as well. But Brooksy, congrats. Rich, you've got real issues with lock. You said that you were really struggling on this.
Yes, I think there's
in terms of too many options.
Yeah, there's some serious depth. It seems at lock. I've gone for. I'm going to say both of them. So one is again a bit of recency. I've gone Dave Ribbons. I think who's just a phenomenal player and has been playing the prime of his career over the last 2 seasons. And the other one, I think Alliance 15 should have somebody from every home nation in there. And I've gone for a man who has died in the wool at Toulouse, if a slightly controversial character at points, and that is Trevor Brennan.
I had Trevor Brennan, and I went away from the recency bias, and I went for Nathan Hines, who was excellent at Claremont. But I think Trevor Brennan kind of has to be there, in my view, somewhere. He kind of basically started a final in pretty much every position of the back five. Elgan, who did you have in your second row?
I, for a long time, considered Ribbons because he is the king of the mile at the moment. I also considered Richie Gray, 7 years at Castres, Toulouse, won a top 14 off the bench. But I too, even though a French team should always have a lock in the number 7 jersey, I also went for Trevor Brennan and another Irishman, captain of Castres, and now coach of many teams, Jeremy Davidson, and actual Lion as well.
Yeah. And a Lion while he was at Castres as well in 2001, or certainly played for them in that season. So Brennan is in. So we're between Ribbons, Hines, and Davidson. Oh, I'm happy to go with any of them. We've kind of all mentioned Ribbons, basically, because he is brilliant. But there is obviously... He did make our top 14 team of the season last year, Rich. I don't know whether that... I think for this criteria, Jeremy Davidson is a little bit too early, if anything. I think his career was kind of done by then, and he's had more time coaching in France than playing. Nathan Hines was amazing in a very, very cool Claremont team. Someone shout a name.
Brennan and Ribbons.
Got it. Brennan and Ribbons it is. 6. Elgan, you had Armitage.
Armitage is 6, yeah.
I've got Willis. Rich, who have you got? Have you got them the other way around?
I've got them the other way around.
Yeah, my back row, though, is Willis, Armitage, Mercer.
I think we're all agreed on that then, aren't we? Are we cheating there? That was the only thing that I thought. Should we have like a Johnny Beattie or a, Magnus Lund or someone like that? Or is it should we, have Brennan in the back row and play him at 7 and Armitage at 6? But I think Willis has been so good, hasn't he? And he's become one of the best players in the world. I
think those 3 players have played kind of continent leading rugby in their positions in their peak when at those various clubs. So I'm very comfortable with that, as much as I was always a big Magnus Lund fan.
I was about to say, well, about Eric Lund, but Eric Lund wasn't actually, it was technically Norwegian, I think. So we have a 15. Does anyone want to pipe up for someone that we barely mentioned, just needs an honourable mention? Joe Simmons MBE obviously needs an honourable mention. Dan Robson, his halfback partner at Poe. That's my section Powerwise bias out of the way. Paul Volley, Richard Paul Jones. Any kind of other left field names that just need a little bit of time in the spotlight?
I don't know about left field. I think just a word on Trevor Brennan, who, when I was looking at, apparently when he did have that fight with the fan, he was on the bench and then came on, got in a fight and got sin-binned. I was reading earlier, which is quite the double header. So that definitely, him kind of shoving Cockers up top, like it just works.
Yeah, bit of bite. There were a lot of options in second row. Nick Kennedy started that 2013 Highland Cup final. I hadn't quite realised that. Luke Charteris, Donica Ryan, they all started Highland Cup finals. Johnny Gray, Simon Shaw, Jim Hamilton, Junior Kapoku, potentially. But regardless, we are running out of time, as Richard is nagging me on this chat. Elgan, thank you very much. Johnny Howard is probably captain, coach, national anthem singer, all of the above, because that is an outstanding shout. Thank you very much for your time. I'm hoping this inspires some sort of similar sister article dating back to kind of the Lions tour, kind of however far back it goes, the 50s, and some sort of player that loosely played for Soyon Golem in 1963 or something like that. But thank you very much for joining us and for giving us your insight as ever. Any closing notes, Rich?
Thank you, Elgan.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Right, so we ran a little bit short on time there. So just to go through our team, 1 to 15, because my brain can't handle the 15 to 9, 1 to 8. So at loosehead prop, Perpignan legend, Perry Freshwater, Richard Cockrell for a bit of grunt at hooker and a bit of old schoolness. Friend of the pod, Kieran Brooks, the Catalan cow at tight head. In the second row, we have Toulouse legend and former Toulousain bar owner, Trevor Brennan, with the current king of the top 14 in second row stakes, Dave Ribbons. At blindside flanker, we have Jack Willis with Stefan Armitage, 2-time, 3-time European Player of the Year and 3-time Champions Cup winner at open side, and the brilliant top 14 Player of the Year from a few years back, Zach Mercer at 8. At scrum half, we have Johnny Howard of Bezier fame, pairing one of the greats of the game, Johnny Wilkinson at 10. Left wing, I can't remember. Who was it?
Blair Kinghorn.
Left wing was Blair Kinghorn. Inside centre, Jamie Noon. 13 was John Davis. Right wing for his unbelievable record, which I think still stands for the most tries in a single top 14 season, Chris Ashton. And controversially, at fullback, I would say, sneaking out a host of stars, the great Benders, Nicker Bendernan, Claremont and Van legend at fullback, with honourable mentions to Dylan Armitage, obviously, and a little bit of Lee Halfpenny. But there was our 15.
Got a just to finish it off, I've got a bench for you with the guys who were honourable mentions. Steve Thompson, Andrew Sheridan, Carl Sinclair. That is a decent replacement front row, I would suggest.
That is, yeah.
Nathan Hines. In the back row, I went for Rich Paul Jones, Sean Perry, Finn Russell, and then I'm sneaking David Strettlin ahead of Dylan Armitage.
Yeah. Okay, fine. I'll give you that.
Good bench.
It is a good bench. It's a really good bench. I mean, it should be. There's about 5 Lions fly halves that have made that bench. Go on then. Quick yes or no. Will these players make the Lions squad? Jack Willis?
No.
I'm going to go... I think I might go no, actually. He should be. He's best flanker in the world, but...
I think based purely on the lateness, and I think Toulouse will be in the top 14 final.
Blair Kinghorn?
I think yes, although... in theory, the same reason he wouldn't be, but I think the candidates at 7 are so outstanding, whereas I think Blair Kinghorn probably would ideally go straight in at 15.
And he was brilliant in the Six Nations, which also helps. Ben White?
No.
Dave Ribbons?
Yes, post an injury to a second row.
Okay.
Next cab off the rank.
Owen Farrell?
No.
Kyle Sinclair?
No, unless there's a couple of injuries.
I can't think of anyone else. Anyone else you want to call out? Courtney Laws?
No.
I think Laws is closer than quite a few. Amazing.
Yeah, possibly.
I think it could well be. I think it'll be Kinghorn. I think Ben White will go.
I wonder if the news of Doris possibly missing the tour opens up a position in the back row for someone like Courtney Laws.
Maybe.
We'll see.
I thought you were going to say Sam Simmons then.
Not this
and
time.
Obviously Joe Simmons, MBE, will be there on his return from fitness. This is your section, Nationale Nibbles.
Nationale Nibbles. Our boys Perrigo, very unfortunately, because I thought they'd won by 3 points, but it turns out I was looking at the wrong result from the week before, which was on the Perrigo website. I thought it looked remarkably similar, but there we go. Perrigo lost at home in extra time to Rouen. Rouen, who will now travel to Chambéry. Elsewhere, Albi succumbed to Carcassonne, which sets up yet another Old Firm derby at the Stade d'Espace de l'Amitié at Narbonne. So Carcassonne will travel to Narbonne next week, and we will see what happens from there. You would imagine, I don't know, Narbonne boxy, right? If the final is actually at home, which apparently is, which is interesting.
Who are our team now in that? Now that Perrigo are out, got to be Carcassonne, isn't it?
I think Carcassonne. Yeah, I think
Carcassonne. For the Butcher.
The Butcher. never been to Carcassonne, but one of our early listeners did travel to Carcassonne on our guidance when they went to see Quins last year. So yeah, we'll go Carcassonne.
And it was a saviour as a place after me and Reece missed a flight. So yeah.
Quite
and
right.
Also I met Johnny McPhillips's girlfriend on the flight there recently. So team Johnny McP. But there's some big games coming up this weekend in the top 14, and Pro Day to talk to me about this round of top 14 fixtures, Richard.
Well, the real standout, and by an absolute mile, is Perpignan v Stade Francais, which
at the Amy Giral, isn't it?
At the Amy Giral. Van are hosting La Rochelle elsewhere. Van having won at home to Toulon the week before. Tough ask to do it again, but why not? If they win that, they're off the bottom suddenly, and it almost feels kind of unimaginable from a few weeks ago. And the fact that one of those sides that could be rock bottom is Stade Francais, as we've discussed on numerous occasions, is remarkable given they finished second in the top 14 last year with a largely similar squad that we thought they'd added to quite nicely. So it's an extraordinary kind of turn of events. It's going to be febrile down in Perpignan, you would think. It's sort of getting a little bit of a reputation for one of the slightly less friendly places to go and travel. And I don't know if it's on Premier Sports, probably not, but it should be an unbelievable occasion.
Also, just to add to that, Stade Francais have got like one bonus point away from home, haven't they, or something like that? Like they've been useless away from home. The games this weekend are, I can tell you, on Premier Sports. We have Castres v Clermont is the early one. Van v La Rochelle. Okay. Van are on every week. There's apparently no late kickoff, and then
late
Sunday
should be Toulon hosting Toulouse at the Stade Velodrome. I can't see it.
And then Montpellier Bordeaux is the
Sunday night.
Is the Sunday night game. But I can't see Toulon v Toulouse on.
Surely that's on. That must be.
You'd imagine so, but I can't see it on here. Anyway, so unfortunately, Perpignan v Stade Francais is not going to be on TV. But you'd imagine that could be. Perpignan got players fit now, and I think they're probably all right.
Yeah,
Van could do the double over La Rochelle.
Yeah, it'd be a remarkable achievement. Anything else in the top 14? I think we've whistled through them quite nicely there.
Pau going away to Lyon. I think the fact it's this game rather than next weekend probably means that Pau won't win. I think if it had been, and the fact it's at home for Lyon, be interesting to see what side they put out. Do they start looking ahead to that Challenge Cup fixture, or are they focused on getting into the barrage? I don't know.
I think this week you go full crack at home, don't you?
Yeah.
I would imagine. Quickly, because we're on the clock a little bit, as we have been a bit tonight, Rob. Pro Day, there is one enormous game on
Montauban
and Béziers.
Winner
Talk
takes
to us
all.
about the stakes in this one.
It's basically winner takes all because they are locked on points, and Soyo and Angoulême are 3 points ahead of both of them. And with one game to go after this, the chances are that the loser of this is going to be too far adrift to overcome the gap, and they will finish a long way. They will finish seventh and a long way clear of eighth. So we've been saying for a while, the top seven, someone is going to be disappointed, and it looks like it's going to be one of these two teams. My money on that is on Montauban. They've been in a bit better form. Béziers have not been in good form. They were pretty poor away at Biarritz, from what I remember, and their injuries have stacked up at a really bad time for them. There's a few other big games potentially.
I'm hearing rumours though that obviously with Samuel Marquez out and has been for a while, that Johnny Howard's coming back for this game. So
nice, yeah.
I think they're taking his boots. Be all right.
Yeah, Mertz is going to turn out of 10 as well. A potential precursor to the final of, albeit the wrong way around, but Brive host Grenoble in the late kickoff. And basically, Aurillac need to win, don't they? Pure and simple. They are 5 points adrift. In theory, they pick up a losing bonus point. Someone else loses. They're not impossible to get into 14th place. But if they don't win away at Nevers, chances are they are in that access match for Pro de Nationale. Argennes go away to Dax as well, which is an interesting one because Dax, again, not quite out of the woods. Feasible they could lose both games, and Aurillac, if they turn something around, could get into it. But Argennes and Mont-de-Marsan, you feel like if they get wins, they've both got winnable games. If they get points, they could well be clear of Aurillac. And the LAC will be in that access match.
Come on, the LAC. Should we finish with, you mentioned Béziers there. There's been a lovely little rumour dropping today. Do you want to finish us with that?
Yeah, Lee Halfpenny supposedly going to Béziers next year. That's the big rumour in Midi Olympique. The other one that I heard this week, which I think is really interesting, is Anthony Bello to Northampton.
Yeah.
Which would be really cool from our perspective. It'd be cool to see a French fly half come over here. We haven't really got... Feels like we've had a while since we had a good French player over in England. Combe Jussan notwithstanding.
Jussan's the only one of them, isn't it? I think it was Picamole before that, wasn't it? It's that far back. Or Flamand, I guess. But
yeah,
there we go. That's I like that one though. All right, I think we're done for another week. Top 14 is back. Freddie Durr is back. So get stuck into that as ever. Follow us on all the usual social channels.
Share with your friends.
Share with your mates. rosbifrugby@gmail.com. We've managed to connect a few fans in the week with tickets. So give us a shout. We'll give you the inside line. But as ever, I've been Richard. That's been Rob. Thank you for listening. Big thank you to Elgan. And au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.